All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're breaking down a pretty big idea, a new blueprint from the Center for American Progress that's aiming to tackle the U.S. housing crisis head on. So let's see what it's all about. Okay, so before we get to the proposed solution, we really need to understand the problem they're trying to solve. And, well, it's a big one. It's a nationwide issue. Yeah, why is housing so ridiculously expensive for so many of us? It's a question a lot of people are asking, right? Whether you're renting or trying to buy, it feels like a constant struggle. The numbers really paint a picture of just how much of a strain this has become. Get this, a full one-third of all households in the US are what's called housing cost burdened. Think about that. One out of every three families or individuals is in this boat. That is a huge number. So, cost burdened, what does that actually mean? It's pretty straightforward. It means you're spending more than 30% of your income on your housing costs. Your rent or your mortgage. That's kind of the official threshold where a roof over your head goes from being a basic need to being a serious financial weight. And a huge reason why things are so expensive is honestly simple supply and demand. The US is short roughly 2 million homes. 2 million. When you just don't have enough of something that everybody needs, of course the prices are going to go through the roof. And this didn't just happen overnight. The author of this plan points a finger way back to the 2008 financial crisis. Remember that? Home building basically fell off a cliff, and, well, it just never really recovered. We haven't been building enough homes since then to keep up. So that brings us to the plan itself. The Center for American Progress has a pretty ambitious proposal to fix this, and they've given it a name that's hard to forget. Let's break down this build, baby, build idea. Okay, so the whole thing really rests on three core ideas, three pillars. First, get rid of the roadblocks to construction. Second, actually ramp up the production of affordable homes. And third, cut down on all the other costs that make housing so expensive. All right, pillar number 1, removing barriers. This is all about tackling the red tape. All the rules and regulations that can make building new homes incredibly slow and super expensive before you even break ground. Now, this is a really important point. The federal government can't just tell a city or town to change its zoning laws. That's a local thing. So the plan is pretty clever. It's not a federal takeover. Instead, as the author Michael Negron puts it, it's about using incentives and disincentives, basically a carrot and stick approach, to get local governments to make those changes themselves. So what would that actually look like? Well, it's about encouraging towns to allow for more options. Things like smaller lot sizes, or letting people build those little backyard cottages. You might have heard them called ADUs. Or, just making it easier to build a duplex or a small apartment building without having to go through years of bureaucratic hoops. Okay, on to pillar 2. This one shifts from policy to the actual production line. The big idea here is, how can we use technology and innovation to make building homes faster, cheaper, and just better? So one way to do that is to really lean into things like modular and manufactured housing. We're talking about homes that are built in sections in a factory and then assembled on site. It can be way more efficient. The plan also suggests creating a brand new federal innovation agency. They're calling it ARTBA-Home, that would be dedicated to finding and funding cool new construction tech. And that brings us to the third and final pillar, cutting other costs. This is about all the other stuff that drives up the final price tag of a house, things that aren't even about the land or the construction itself. And a perfect example of this is tariffs on building materials, taxes on things like lumber and steel. The report calls these self-inflicted wounds that just make building more expensive. So the proposal says, hey, let's get rid of those. They make a comparison to food tariffs that were recently rolled back. The logic is pretty simple, right? If it works for making food cheaper, why wouldn't it work for housing? It's not just about materials, though. It's also about the money. This part of the plan looks at the big mortgage players, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and suggests reforms to help builders get the financing they need to actually, build. But there's a big but here. The plan also warns against privatizing those companies completely because that could actually end up making mortgages more expensive for regular home buyers, a total backfire. So that's the plan. Now for the big questions. What does this all cost? And more importantly, what's the payoff for you and me? Let's start with the payoff. The authors estimate that if this whole plan works, renters in high-cost cities could save about $1,000 a year. Not bad. But for first-time homebuyers, the savings could be huge. We're talking around $24,000 on a typical home. I mean, that is a game changer for a family trying to buy their first place. Okay, so what's the price tag for all this? The estimate is $95 billion. That's over a 5-year period. But what do you get for that $95 billion? Well, the goal is pretty ambitious. It's to completely wipe out that 2 million home shortage we talked about at the beginning. And get this, the timeline is just 5 years. So there you have it, a really detailed blueprint for tackling a massive generational problem. But, a blueprint is just paper. It leaves us with the big question. The plan is drawn, but who's going to build it?